I was the only one who stayed by my father's side when he was sick. I cooked, I cleaned, I carried him to bed when his legs gave out. And when he died, I thought my loyalty would be remembered. But at the reading of the will, my sister walked away with a $1,150,000 luxury home, while I got a crumbling shack by the lake. She smirked and said, "Guess you were the worst daughter after all." But when I stepped inside that dusty, broken-down house, I found something hidden that would change everything. Before I tell you how that ruined old lake house turned into the most shocking twist of my life, make sure you subscribe. I share real stories of betrayal, revenge, and shocking family secrets every single day. And trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing just how far these stories travel. My name is Ellen Smith, though everyone just calls me Ellen. I'm 68 years old, and I thought I had seen enough betrayal in life to be unshakable. I was wrong. See, I wasn't the favorite daughter. That was my younger sister, Rebecca. She was the golden child from the moment she could talk, the one with the glamorous life, the flashy friends, and the constant validation. I was the one who stayed behind, the one who kept the house running, the one who made sure Dad's medical appointments were never missed. When our father's health began to decline, Rebecca was nowhere to be found. She was always busy with vacations, business meetings, or her kids' school events. The truth? She just didn't want to deal with the reality of watching our father waste away. So I became his nurse, his cook, his driver, sometimes even his punching bag when his moods darkened from the illness. For years, I poured myself into caring for him. I gave up vacations, sleep, and even my own retirement savings to make sure he had everything he needed. Rebecca would show up once in a blue moon, dressed to the nines, snapping a quick photo at his bedside for social media before disappearing again. Still, a part of me believed that Dad knew who had really been there for him, that when the time came, he would honor my loyalty and sacrifice. The day of the will reading proved me painfully wrong. We gathered at his lawyer's office, just me, Rebecca, and a couple of distant cousins. I sat in the stiff leather chair, hands folded, bracing myself. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. "To my daughter, Rebecca, I leave the property at 41 Elmwood Drive." Rebecca let out a little squeal before she even heard the rest. Elmwood Drive wasn't just any property. It was a sprawling luxury home worth over $1.15 million. I felt my stomach twist as her smile stretched wider, her manicured nails already tapping the table like she was impatient to go collect the keys. The lawyer continued, "And to my daughter Ellen, I leave the lakeside property at 9 Willow Bend." I blinked. My heart sank. Willow Bend wasn't a prize. It was a decaying shack my grandfather once used for fishing trips. The roof sagged, the foundation cracked, and the whole place reeked of mildew. It wasn't worth more than a few $1,000s, and that was being generous. Rebecca laughed. Actually laughed. She turned to me, eyes gleaming with cruelty, and said, "Guess you were the worst daughter after all." The room chuckled uncomfortably, but I sat frozen, a storm raging inside me. My father had left me nothing but a rotting shell while handing Rebecca a palace. After everything I had done, after years of wiping his brow and lifting his frail body into bed, this was my reward? The lawyer droned on about final wishes and legalities, but I didn't hear much. All I could hear was Rebecca's mocking voice echoing in my head. Worst daughter, worst daughter. That night, I drove out to Willow Bend to see exactly what I had been saddled with. The road was barely passable, overgrown with weeds. The house itself looked like it might collapse if I sneezed too hard. Windows cracked, shutters hanging, the porch rotting through. I stood there in the dark, staring at my inheritance. Rebecca had gotten chandeliers and marble countertops. I had gotten termites and mold. I pushed the creaky door open, expecting the smell of damp wood and decay, and I wasn't wrong. But underneath it, faintly, there was something else. Something metallic. Something hidden. That night, while the moonlight filtered through broken blinds, I discovered the secret that would change everything. And for the first time since the will reading, I smiled. This wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. The floor groaned beneath my feet as I stepped deeper into the house. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts, and every corner seemed to whisper of abandonment. The wallpaper was peeling in long strips, the kitchen cabinets sagged, and the old wooden beams looked ready to snap. But then there was that smell again, not just mildew, something sharp, metallic. My instincts prickled. I walked through the house, flashlight in hand, until I reached the back room. It had once been a study, I guessed, though now it was just filled with broken furniture and old fishing gear. Against one wall was a heavy oak desk, its surface warped with water damage. I tugged at the drawers, most of them swollen shut, until one finally gave way with a screech. Inside were bundles of yellowed papers, ledgers with my grandfather's handwriting. My heart pounded as I flipped through them. The ledgers weren't just casual notes. They were records, detailed records. And then I saw the numbers. Tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, eventually millions. Investments, land purchases, stocks, even offshore accounts. My grandfather had been building a fortune in secret, a fortune no one in the family had ever mentioned. I sat there frozen, my hands trembling over the ink-stained pages. If this was real, if this wasn't just some half-baked dream, then that meant the crumbling shack I'd been given wasn't worthless at all. It was the key. The property, the accounts tied to it, the hidden investments, everything was in my name now. I stumbled backward, gripping the desk for balance. The metallic smell that had drawn me here, it came from a rusty safe, hidden behind the desk, half buried under rotting floorboards. It took me 2 hours, a hammer, and every ounce of strength left in my aging body to get it open. When I did, I nearly collapsed. Stacks of cash, carefully bundled, certificates, deeds, a letter. The letter was in my father's handwriting. It began, "Ellen, if you are reading this, then I am gone. I know you think I loved Rebecca more. I didn't. I knew she would burn through wealth like paper and fire. I gave her the house because it will destroy her in time. But you are the one who cared. You are the one I trusted. This lake house holds everything of true value. I hid it here to protect it from Rebecca's greed. You'll know what to do." Tears blurred my vision. My knees gave way and I sank onto the floor, the letter trembling in my hands. All those years of resentment, of feeling second best, of thinking my father never saw me, and here it was. Proof. Proof that he trusted me more than anyone. Rebecca thought she had won. She thought she had walked away with the prize while I was left with garbage. But the truth? I was holding the legacy, the fortune, the power. For the first time in decades, I felt something I hadn't in years. Fire. I spent days cataloging everything: the investments my grandfather had left, the offshore accounts, the hidden stocks. It was overwhelming, but it also gave me a sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Rebecca was flaunting her new mansion on social media, throwing parties, bathing in champagne, showing off like a queen. She had no idea that I held the crown jewels, but I didn't rush. No, I let her think she had won. I let her bask in her arrogance. And in that quiet, I began to plan. See, revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's a smile over dinner while you know something the other person doesn't. Sometimes it's waiting until just the right moment to let the truth explode like a grenade. And Rebecca's time was coming. Because what she didn't know was that her $1 million home wasn't really hers. Not completely. There were debts tied to it, obligations hidden in the paperwork. Debts I now controlled. The house she had paraded as her victory would soon become her downfall. And me, the worst daughter, the one she mocked and humiliated, I was about to become the last person she'd ever underestimate. Every week, I'd see another set of photos splashed across her Facebook page. Her posing by the marble staircase of her new mansion, clinking wine glasses with her friends by the infinity pool, or boasting about the latest renovations she had personally designed. $10,000 chandeliers are worth it when you're living like royalty, she'd written under one picture. The comment section was flooded with, "You deserve it, girl," and "So happy for you." Meanwhile, I sat at my worn oak table in the crumbling lake house, quietly sipping tea and smiling. Because while Rebecca bragged, I researched. I dove headfirst into the mountain of paperwork my father had left. The debts tied to her house were very real. My father hadn't exaggerated. Years ago, when he was expanding his business, he had leveraged part of that property, the mansion Rebecca was living in, as collateral for loans. But here was the twist. Those debts hadn't vanished. They had simply been buried, managed, and tucked neatly into the very trust that was now in my name. Legally, I had the power to call them due. Rebecca thought she was queen of the castle. She didn't realize the castle was built on sand. But I wasn't reckless. At 68 years old, you don't rush into battles. You measure. You wait. You strike only when your opponent has their back turned. So, I watched. Weeks passed, then months. Rebecca burned through money like a wildfire. She held extravagant dinners with hundreds of guests, bought designer clothes she'd never wear twice, and even leased a luxury car for every day of the week. The more she flaunted, the deeper her arrogance grew, and the more careless she became. I still remember the phone call. "Ellen, darling," she chirped, her voice sugary sweet. "I thought I'd check in. How's the shack? Still standing, or has it finally collapsed into the lake?" My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "It's holding up just fine." "Oh, good," she laughed. I've been thinking, maybe you could move in with me someday. Be my little housekeeper. That way you'll at least get to enjoy what real wealth feels like before you die." The cruelty dripped from her words. I ended the call politely, but when I set the phone down, my hands trembled, not with weakness this time, but with clarity. Rebecca wasn't just greedy, she was venomous, and my father had been right. Giving her everything up front was the perfect poison. The difference was, I wasn't going to wait for karma to run its course. I was going to accelerate it. Over the following weeks, I hired a financial advisor, a discreet, sharp-minded man named Daniel, who had once worked with my grandfather. He nearly choked when I laid the ledgers and deeds before him. "Ellen,
"This is a fortune," he whispered. "I know," I said, "but I don't want to spend it, not yet. I want to use it." He tilted his head. "Use it? How?" I smiled. "To teach my sister a lesson she'll never forget." Daniel helped me quietly maneuver the paperwork, shifting accounts, tightening control, and preparing the legal trigger that could flip Rebecca's world upside down. We didn't rush. We made sure every detail was airtight. Meanwhile, Rebecca unknowingly dug her own grave. She took out loans to expand her empire, not realizing she was already shackled to debts she couldn't escape. She bought expensive art pieces, posting selfies next to them, unaware that the walls of her palace were about to crumble. And the more she gloated, the calmer I became. See, there's a strange power in patience. Rebecca mistook my silence for defeat. She thought I was old, frail, and irrelevant. She laughed at the shack I inherited, never once asking what secrets it held. And that was her fatal mistake. Because while she was busy flaunting her victory, I was building a quiet empire of my own, one that controlled hers. And when the time was right, I would pull the strings.
The morning it began, the air smelled like rain. I sat by the cracked window of the lake house, sipping my coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was Daniel, my advisor. His voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of thunder. "Ellen, it's done. The notices have been filed." I closed my eyes, letting the moment sink in. Months of patience, of silence, of pretending to be the weaker sister. And now the tide had turned. By noon, Rebecca's mansion was buzzing, but not with laughter. It was with panic. I can only imagine the scene when the first bank officials arrived at her doorstep, crisp suits in the middle of her marble foyer. They handed her the official documents, liens placed, debts recalled, assets frozen pending investigation. Her empire had just been shackled by chains she couldn't even see until they snapped shut around her. I didn't hear from her that day, but by evening, my phone lit up with a call. "Ellen," Rebecca's voice cracked like a whip, the arrogance gone, replaced with desperation. What the hell is going on? They're saying I owe hundreds of thousands, that there are debts tied to this house, that it's under your name?" I stirred my tea slowly, savoring the sound of her unraveling. "Oh, Rebecca, didn't you read the fine print? Daddy left me the shack, yes, but he also left me the keys to the kingdom and the chains around yours." There was a pause, heavy with her disbelief. Then came the explosion. "You knew? You planned this? You let me?" Her voice broke, fury colliding with panic. "This isn't fair." Fair? The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Was it fair when she mocked me at the funeral? When she told me I was worthless compared to her? When she paraded her wealth in front of me while I lived in a crumbling house? No, this wasn't about fairness. This was about balance. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca's perfect life imploded. Creditors came knocking, party invitations dried up. Her so-called friends, the same ones who once praised her for living like royalty, vanished faster than smoke in the wind. I watched from my porch as the local paper ran a headline, "Prominent Socialite Facing Bankruptcy." Her photos, the same ones she once posted with such pride, were now plastered under articles dissecting her downfall. And while she scrambled, I thrived. The lake house, as it turned out, was no crumbling ruin. With Daniel's help, I discovered the hidden accounts tied to it, investments my father had tucked away, waiting for someone wise enough to look deeper. It wasn't just money. It was investment stakes in businesses across the state, stocks in companies that had doubled in value, and even land deeds in prime locations. The shack was a mask. Behind its peeling paint and sagging roof, it held a fortune greater than Rebecca's entire mansion. And unlike her, I didn't waste it. I repaired the house, restored it with care, and invested the rest. I lived simply, but securely. Every dollar worked for me, quietly compounding, while Rebecca clawed desperately at the crumbling walls of her palace. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the lake in shades of gold, my phone rang again. "Ellen!" Her voice was small this time, fragile. I barely recognized it. "Please, you have to help me. They're taking everything. I don't know what to do." I stared out at the water, calm and steady. The sister who once mocked me was now begging for crumbs. "Rebecca," I said softly, "you told me once I was the worst daughter, that I was nothing. Do you remember?" Silence on the line, then a faint sob. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was arrogant," I finished for her, "and cruel and blind. Daddy saw it, and now, so do you." I let the words linger, heavy and sharp. "I can't fix this for you, Rebecca. You built your empire on sand, and now the tide has come in." She cried quietly, and for the first time, I felt not triumph, but release. The years of belittlement, of watching her bask in glory while I was shoved aside, it had all led here. And I wasn't angry anymore. I was free, because Rebecca finally understood what she had never wanted to see. Money doesn't make you rich. Character does. And in that, she was bankrupt long before the banks came knocking.
Winter arrived early that year. The lake froze over, smooth as glass, and the air carried a stillness that mirrored the silence in my heart. By then, Rebecca's world had collapsed completely. Her mansion, the one she bragged about endlessly, was gone, auctioned off to pay debts. Her luxury cars, the jewels she flashed at parties, even the designer handbags she used to parade like trophies, all seized, sold, or pawned. And Rebecca? She was renting a cramped apartment above a noisy restaurant on the edge of town. I know this because one icy morning, she showed up on my doorstep. Her once perfect hair hung limp, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. She wore a coat that was too thin for the weather, her hands trembling as she clutched the strap of a worn-out purse. For a moment, I barely recognized her. The proud, sharp-tongued sister who once called me worthless was gone. In her place stood a woman stripped bare by her own greed. "Ellen," she whispered, her voice raw, "please, I don't have anywhere else to go." I let her inside, sat her down by the fire, poured her tea. And as she wrapped her hands around the steaming cup, I studied her carefully. She was broken, but not humbled. Even in her ruin, I saw flickers of bitterness in her eyes, resentment simmering beneath the cracks. She didn't come to reconcile. She came because she needed me. And that's when I made my final choice. I leaned forward, my tone calm, steady. "Rebecca, you always thought wealth was about mansions, parties, and power. But wealth is peace, security, knowing you lived with honor. Daddy tried to teach us that, but you never listened." Her lip trembled, and for a moment I thought she might argue, but instead, tears slid silently down her cheeks. "I can't fix what you've done, but I can decide what I do. And Rebecca, my choice is simple. I forgive you, but I will never rescue you." Her head snapped up, eyes wide.
You what?
I forgive you, I repeated, softly but firmly, because I won't carry this bitterness any longer. But your mess, your downfall, that's yours to carry, not mine. You walked past me for years, laughing at my struggles. Now you'll walk your own path, alone. She sat frozen, the weight of my words pressing down like the snow outside. Then, without another word, she stood, buttoned her thin coat, and walked out of my house, out of my life. I didn't stop her. From that day on, I lived differently. I restored the lake house into something beautiful, not flashy, not grand, but warm, full of life. I hosted neighbors for dinners, helped local kids with scholarships using the funds my father had hidden, and created the kind of community that money can never truly buy. Every morning, I woke to peace, and every night, I slept without regret. Rebecca, on the other hand, drifted. I'd hear whispers in town that she moved from job to job, that she tried to regain her status but never quite managed. People pitied her, but no one followed her the way they once did. She had been a queen, but without her crown, she was just another face in the crowd. And me? I finally understood why my father left things the way he did. The crumbling house wasn't a punishment, it was a test, a hidden treasure wrapped in disguise. He trusted me to see past the surface, to uncover the truth, to prove that value is not always where it glitters. Rebecca never would have passed that test, and that's why she lost everything, long before she ever signed her first mortgage. Now, when I walk through the halls of the lake house, I sometimes stop in front of the old photographs of our childhood. Two sisters, smiling, our futures unwritten, and I whisper, "Thank you, Daddy. You knew all along." Because in the end, I didn't just inherit a fortune, I inherited wisdom, and Rebecca inherited nothing but the silence of her own mistakes.